Hi everyone, and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm one of your hosts, Blake Rasmussen, and with me is Paul Cheon. We're doing his favorite show today, Art and Flavor.
That is what all competitive Magic players think about when they play Fruit.
That's why we brought Paul in, because he's a flavor master. He knows everything there is to know about art, so he's going to have a lot of questions. But why don't we let the audience know who we're talking to about these things? Who do we got here, Paul?
Yeah, so today we have James Wyatt, who is the co-creative lead, along with Cynthia Shepard, for M19. You've led multiple sets in the past as well. Also work on a bunch of art books and all that stuff in the past. And
he's also done a lot of the D&D crossover. Actually, all of.
Basically, I was like, what are all the things you do? And then it just kept going on. And I was like, all right. M19 lead, we're going to stick with that.
That's what we care about today.
That's what everybody here cares about.
But if you're a big fan of the Plane Shift e-books that we put out that are our little D&D adventures set in the Magic world, that's James Wyatt. He also does the art books, and this is all in his free time. His actual job here is in IT, actually.
Yeah.
But that's not true.
That is not true. And then to James's right, we have Alayna Danner, the most famous Danner. She is a fantasy illustrator and a magic artist. And so she has done a lot of pieces for Magic recently, so she's pretty new to Magic, but she's done a lot of cool things. We can put up some of the cards that she's done, so I'm just going to list some of these off. She's done Bloodforged Battle Axe, she's done Blood Tallow Candle, Dragon Skull Summit, which was one of the really cool looks at the dual lands, Jousting Lance, which if you played M19 Limited, you have played with and against this card, Path of Ancestry, which is a slam dunk include in any tribal commander deck, Riverwise Augur, print of which I have hanging on my game room wall at home, and then Supreme Will, which your husband came up to me as soon as you were working on this. He's like, Elena's working on a card, you're going to play it a lot.
Yeah, this card's legit.
Yeah, and I was like, that card I will be playing a lot. So we are going to be talking about M19 lore and art today. So let's start, James, let's start with you. So we took a lot of questions from fans. We took a lot of questions from inside the building. So we got a lot to go over here. So core sets have kind of this strange dynamic lore-wise, with the exception of Origins, which sort of had 5 separate stories. Sets don't really have a setting per se. But with Core 2019, there's a storyline. It involves Nicol Bolas. There's a little bit of Tarkir in there, but then there's also the Plains. Can you tell us a little bit about the grab bag nature of working on core sets and creative in that way?
So more than Origins was, Core Set 2019 is a reprint set. It's got a lot of reprints in it, as well as a lot of new cards. So there's sort of by definition not a coherent setting to the whole thing. But there's what I think of as a story overlay, which involves Nicol Bolas and 5 Planeswalkers that he's had interactions with in the past.
Okay.
So there's one Planeswalker in each color. We've got a Johnny, whom Bolas fought on Alara. We've got Tezzeret, who has been acting as a minion of Bolas. We've got Liliana. We've got Sarkhan, who also has been a minion of Bolas in the past. And then a new Planeswalker, Vivian Reed, whose home plane Bolas destroyed. So there's this layer of story where each of these Planeswalkers has a card. Each of them has a spell card that's associated with them.
So
that
that's
shows
like one
their
with the machine, and for Tezzeret, and then
Johnny's Last Stand.
Johnny's Last Stand,
which is on Alara back in the past, not a future Last Stand of him dying or anything like that. We've also got the other 4 Elder Dragons from Bolas's past. So, and then 3 cards in Bolas's 3 colors that are his Height of Power, his fall from power with the mending, and his patient rebuilding to get back to the power he had.
So that's just like a fraction of the set overall.
Right. And then the rest is, there's cards set on plenty of our known planes, and then things like, I need a Dwarven Priest for this card, and artist, go, do something cool, which
is Elena's job,
which is really cool. With the core sets, they're different from when there's an actual distinct plane like Ixalan or Innistrad. So normally with those sets, you get a style guide that can be like 400 pages long and it's very exact. Like you want to be here doing this thing with this thing happening. With the core set, it's a lot more open. It's like draw something awesome, like an awesome dwarf or a glittery, shiny diamond horse. You know, where you want it to be.
To choose an example.
For
Random,
example.
just out of a bag. So yeah, moving from that, so we have the core set where you were talking about in previous sets, you kind of have certain things that you have to really like fulfill. Like, hey, we're going to do pirates and dinosaurs or whatever. Now with M19, how do you balance things like high fantasy, things like dwarves and things that are kind of more well known, to things that are kind of just within Magic, like our Loxodon and Viashino?
Well, so the mindset I was trying to get myself into is that a core set is intended to be the ideal product for somebody who's just coming into Magic for the first time. And so you want that person to see things that are familiar and resonant. Hey, I know what a dwarf is. There's lots of elves in this set. And also things that say, this is what Magic is. Magic is a cool, unique fantasy property. And we've got Loxodons and Roxas, which are very dear to my heart. So I made sure that we had a little bit of that Viashino, things that introduce the brand in a sort of gentle, resonant way, but make, this is not just generic Fantasyland. This is a cool property. To use brand speak.
Elena, what do you like drawing more? Do you like drawing the sort of generic, well-known fantasy stuff, elves and dwarves, or do you like Magic's take on some of these other types of creatures?
I can't really pick. It's kind of nice to have both.
Okay.
Like it's nice when you're working on a very specific set to be told like we want you to do exactly this. But it's also like a nice breath of fresh air to be like I get to do my take on it. So I really like doing both.
Okay. Now, James, there was a lot of talk before we announced anything about core set being a villains set. That was one of the rumors in the community. Was there ever any talk, we won't address that specifically, but was there any talk of giving the core set a more kind of cohesive, so doing it more like an Origins or even setting it on one world, Bolas's home plane or anything like that?
Well, we did Bolas's home plane in the set before, but not really. This was really conceived more as a core set like we used to do, very distinct from Origins. It's, like I said, it's full of reprints. So right there's already a level of discontinuity that we embraced rather than trying to fight against by layering a coherent setting over the whole thing.
Yeah, there's no Crucible of Worlds on Amonkhet or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the core set is a nice opportunity to reprint a bunch of cards, which we talked about, because we didn't get those opportunities when we got rid of the core set, and all of a sudden we were thinking, wait, we just can't make these cards anymore. We need a core set back. So I mean, it's really nice to have it come back. Now, a lot of people are excited about Bolas. And there's a lot of ties with Bolas. You talk about all the people that he's had his hands on, which is basically every card almost. How much of the set is tied to kind of the Bolas Ugin story?
So that's interesting. The goal really here was to show Bolas's clawed fingers in a lot of pies. In the card set itself, we see 5 of those pies really clearly. The worlds and lives of the Planeswalkers that he's interacted with. And then the storyline on Magic Story, which is where Ugin and Tarkir come in, that's a 6th pie, basically. But it gets
How many fingers does Nicol Bolas have?
Well, it's Dovin counting to 6 on his hand.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
But that is a story that gets back into a really important part of Bolas's origin story and how a lot of the stuff that we've been doing over the last couple of years starts to tie together.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here because we've also gotten questions on diversity in Magic, and not only in M19 but Magic as a whole. We've done a lot of work to showcase a bit more diversity in the game, but how important is it to, because you start working long before art descriptions are made on world building and that sort of stuff. How intentional is building diversity into those worlds? How important is it?
It's hugely important to us as a team. We want to the reaction that we are hoping to provoke is, oh my gosh, I see myself in this card set, which is very gratifying to us when it happens. In our world building, it's almost taken for granted. It's like a given that like we don't intentionally create worlds where here's where the African analog culture is, and dark-skinned people come from, and here's where redheads come from on this strange mutant island.
Redheads out there. You are not mutants. You are lovely human beings.
My wife is a redhead,
Okay.
and they literally are mutants.
James getting all sciencey on it.
Sorry. You know, creative.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is pretty much a given that all the humans on any world we design are going to showcase the range of diversity that is found in humans in this world. Sometimes, like on Ixalan, we pushed that a little bit. The vampires in that world were very stereotypically pale vampires.
Yeah.
And so the other groups of humans, the pirates in the Sun Empire, were not. There were a couple of lighter-skinned pirates, but also a lot of people of various ethnic looks there. So it's really important. It's something we actually track on a card-by-card level as we're concepting art, but in the world-building sense, it's just assumed that's what our people look like in Magic.
And Elena, how do you tackle that when you're creating fantasy art?
Well, the only piece that I've done so far that's like an actual humanoid character is a merfolk.
Okay.
So I had a lot of fun. I'd never drawn a blue person before. And trying to make, which was a really fun, difficult kind of solve. Like, how do you make someone with blue skin look alive, but still blue,
Sure.
you know? And especially, you know, trying to show, like, you know, there's blood pumping under that skin. You know, it's not just, you know, like Blue Man Group kind of painted on. So it was very fun, unique challenge, and hopefully there'll be more to come in the future.
That's really cool. I never thought about it in that perspective, because I'm not an artist, clearly.
All right, so I want to talk about more the dragons again. Going back to the Nico Bolas, and of course, I mean, these are kind of like some of the most hyped cards in the set. You know, we have kind of the return of all the Elder Dragons, you know, and I mean, a lot of them look super exciting. Like Archetypes, for example, I'm sure somebody saw that card and was like, all right, search Defender, and then just see if I can build it.
I threw a deck together the day we previewed it.
Let's just put it this way: even when we made the card, I was looking it up in our FFL decks too. I was like, all right, is there a playable Defender deck? Because if there is, it'd be sweet, and it'd be interesting to see if people find that out.
All of my Alliance's shield spheres are coming in handy.
Yeah, but so Bolas has had kind of a drastic makeover since kind of the origins. You know, he was just kind of sitting there, looks kind of like a librarian, just looks like he's studying, and now he's just trying to take over the world.
I feel like he should have a smoking jacket on.
Yeah. Oh, you can see it on the screen if you're watching at home.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Lounging there, reading some books.
That just looks like a
hanging out.
That looks like Grandpa Bolas. You know?
Yeah, Grandpa.
I've already like this looks like Bolas like 200 years in the future. I've already taken
After
over
he's
the
retired.
world. Yeah, I'm kind of
like-
off it. These planeswalkers are really annoying. I'm just gonna sit here,
I was off
relax.
scheming. I missed all these great books that I meant to read. I just never had the time.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do in my retirement.
Right.
Awesome.
And so a lot of the other, you know, we know a lot about Bolas at this point, but we know very little about kind of the other Elder Dragons. You know, what kind of went into kind of the creative process with kind of bringing them back to life?
So art-wise, I actually had a lot of conversations with people about how to do this, because the Bolas reimagining, which I want to say was from the Vault Dragons, was it that the first place we did it?
The new art, I think so.
Yeah, so that wasn't
I never
anything
remember
like,
if art ends up on Mitgo beforehand or after.
Yeah, sure. That wasn't a case of, okay, take this original illustration and change it in precisely these ways, or carry precisely these elements forward and give us Bolas. So I couldn't do the same thing with the other Elder Dragons. It was really a question of finding the things that make each dragon distinct, and asking the artist, again, giving a lot of free reign to say, okay, Palladium Ores has curling ram's horns. Give me a cool dragon with curling ram's horns. Chromium, go.
A shiny dragon. Give me a shiny dragon.
And your description for Nicol Bolas wasn't, he has books, go?
No.
No? Okay. Now, you talked earlier about the Planeswalkers and that the ones in the set are all ones that have intersected Bolas at some point in time. We've met them all before. We're all familiar with all of their stories, except for one, Vivian Reed. Where did she come from? What went into creating her?
A long process went into creating her, like just about everything we do. We had a lot of conversations about what does green need in a new Planeswalker. Garrick has been kind of out of the picture for a while, so somebody creature-focused was really important to sort of get back into the environment, so to speak. Mm-hmm. What are the kind of nature character archetypes we want to be working with? We discussed a couple of different options to explore and ended up on this sort of wilderness ranger with beast companion type imagery, which is pretty familiar in fantasy land. Mm-hmm. And so then again, it was a question of what's the unique magic take on this character. We did a lot of rounds of concept art. We ended up doing market research studies to consumer testing to get feedback on the designs that we had come up with, to give a character that I think is really cool. And then she didn't really come to full fruition until Alison Lures was working on the creative text for this set. And she ended up sounding a lot like a very famous hunter of crocodiles who shall remain nameless, just in her sheer enthusiasm for the creatures of the multiverse that she is meeting.
One of multiple famous crocodile hunters.
Now, Elena, for those who don't know, Elena also plays Magic. Plays it quite well.
Oh, you're sweet.
What was your what was your reaction to seeing Vivian Reed?
It's just always exciting to see a new Planeswalker, and that's always the greatest feeling when you're cracking a pack in a draft or something, and then seeing somebody brand new and being like, "Oh, this is awesome!" So I'm really excited for M19 to come out because the new Planeswalkers are always super exciting.
Do you? Because you have not done a Planeswalker yet.
Nope.
Do you ever get a little Planeswalker envy as an artist?
I haven't gotten to that point yet. No, I'm a little bit below that yet. I'm still on the land envy. I like doing
envy.
lands.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later as well. Yeah.
Well, the next time maybe there's like a merfolk Planeswalker. You've already spent a lot of time trying to make that.
Tell Cynthia.
Yeah. All right, James. So you're the author of the art books. We talked a little bit about that. The most recent one, the Dominaria art book, you were saying earlier that actually has a lot of ties to the 2019.
So it's funny. The Art of Magic: The Gathering Dominaria is the 6th book in this series that Viz has been publishing under license from us. And everyone previously has been in the 2-set block model. So actually for Zendikar, we had 5 sets worth of cards to draw from because the original, in terms of picking art for the book. And same with Innistrad. For Kaladesh, we had 2 sets plus Origins. For Amonkhet, it was just the 2 sets. And because of the timelines of the books, it's actually hard to use any card we want to from the 2nd set. Anyway, all of this is getting to Dominaria didn't have a 2nd set. And it turns out finding art to represent all of the things in the book was getting a little tricky. So as I was concepting M19, the timeline worked out that I was able to say, okay, in the first wave of art for M19, I really need a Dominaria Merfolk and a Dominaria Viashino, because there's only so much art of these creatures and characters from earlier sets that we could draw on, and turned out there wasn't enough space in Dominaria to give all of these people the space that they needed to really shine in the art book. So we have a lot of text about them from the World Guide and pulled into the art book, and not enough art to support all that text.
How far ahead do you start working on the art books? Are we talking years, months?
Yeah. Oh, they go to the printer about 6 months before release.
Okay.
So we're hoping that the possibly unannounced Ravnica art book is going to the printer as early as, well, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow.
Okay.
It's just, I think, what the schedule originally said. And that'll come out in January, so it's a little over 6 months. But I've been working on it for
a while. So we hear a lot about what creative timeline, about what R&D timelines are. They work on a set for 2 years, they hand it off at this time. But what's the creative timeline like for building worlds for new sets?
It is equally crazy.
Okay.
We have, oh boy, okay, let me try to think here. It is now 2018, and M19 is just coming out. So work on the next set after that is done. Work on the next set after that, so January or early 2019 is almost done.
Yep.
Last minute creative text changes happening. Hopefully those will be done. Milk is still in process.
This is R&D lives in a
happening.
constant state of like not knowing what day or year it is.
Yes.
What can I say publicly and what can I not? What has been announced?
Also, just like, what do people know sometimes?
He's
'Cause
like-
it's like,
I
did we
can-
announce the set yet?
Yeah, I can hear James talking like this next set, and it's the next set.
Yeah. So then this summer one is still in process. You
heard it here first. We're having a summer set next year.
Yeah. So then the next set, the fall, what are we up to? 2020.
Who knows at this point?
Where are we?
We are about to print that world guide.
Okay.
The set after that, I'm almost done writing the world guide.
It could be 2025 by now.
The
Nobody knows.
Set after that, we're having the concept push now.
Okay. We
Set
had a bunch of
after
artists in the
that-
building the other day. Yep.
Yeah, we are. We're still in exploratory world building. And the set after that, we're not
How
really
wide
touching
can
yet.
James's arms get? Yep.
Yeah. 2023 is when really things get
Well,
wild.
so I mean, we do actually know,
Yeah.
at least tentatively, what worlds we're going to about.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure it's that far, but it's a ways out.
Right.
Okay.
So there's the general process of arc planning overall, but then in terms of actually working on specific worlds, we're however far that was ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. And Elena, how long ago did you start working on your M19 pieces?
About a year.
About a year?
Yeah, about a year.
Okay.
I can't wait to see those upcoming style guides. That's always a super fun thing is if you get like an art call out for a new world or set or whatever, and you get the new style guide, it's just like so much fun to just sit there and scroll through and be like, oh,
Do you just read the whole thing,
beautiful.
like even if it has nothing to do with whatever you were assigned? You're just like, I'm just gonna look through this.
Pretty much. Yeah, well, it's
Just
also
good.
interesting.
Just to be complete, to really do my job.
Well, it's just so gorgeous. Like it's like getting a preview of the art book really way ahead of time, and just seeing like all like this art and flavor and awesomeness that goes into these and love that goes into these worlds so far ahead of time. Like when these artists come in and do these concept pushes, they come with just such gorgeous stuff to just pour over. So can't wait to see that.
All right, now I have a question that comes straight from my wife. So I basically, Elena actually knows my wife pretty well.
Shauna.
I basically convinced my wife to play Magic by building her a cat deck. So thank you for whoever in R&D was responsible for that. But the only thing she loves more than cats is horses, which we now have a cycle of
Horse
in
tribal.
M19. Horse tribal is a thing you can do in standard, so that's the next deck I have to build apparently. And Elena even painted one of them. We can actually throw it up on the screen now. Diamond Mare. We'll talk more about this this horse a little bit later. But where there's this cycle of 5 horses plus the Diamond Mare. Where did this come from?
That's a fine question. So I think Diamond Mare actually came first, and I was just looking back at the notes that I took when the creative team was going through the set and just brainstorming ideas, and I wrote down, be the pet you want to see in the world.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time, it was actually a 2-1. Now it's a 1-3. So we were thinking of something that was sort of fragile and beautiful and refractive, creating rainbows. And so that's where we ended up. It's not, fortunately, a little pet. It's a 1-3 now. It's sizable and significant and not as easily shattered as it
It
was.
is made of diamonds.
Diamond
Right,
Mare.
right,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
So then there was this weird cycle of creatures.
You mean Great Cycle of Creatures?
Yes, totally awesome and totally weird cycle of creatures that I think Ethan has talked about this new form of color hate. So again, in the top line meetings, we're like, what the heck is a white creature that can't be blocked by red creatures, and where do we go? So the general theme that came out was pushing through the ranks of whatever color is trying to stop it. And it wasn't until I was sitting down and actually writing the concepts that I was like, these could all be horses. And the funny thing is, one of them was originally a unicorn, and Ethan came to me and said, can this actually just be a horse? Because they've all got because of the Amonkhet horse, whose name is escaping me right now.
Crested Sunmare. Yeah. It makes other horses indestructible, and it makes other horses.
It's a big life.
It's a very big horse too.
Yeah, the biggest. All right, so going through the set, you've worked on all the cards at this point. What are some of your favorite cards in the set?
So this set tickles my fancy in a lot of ways. The same freedom that we were talking about in terms of not having a world guide to be working from meant that sometimes just weird stuff comes out of my brain. And so we have a fling-like card that involves sacrificing a creature in order to destroy another creature. And we've done so many variations on the idea of one creature throwing another creature as a missile. So I wrote this one, it's Thud, as one creature falling on another creature.
That's awesome.
And so writing the concept is one thing, but then the art for this is just so adorable.
Imagine being the person that had to draw that. It's like, all right, let's go.
And he clearly had so much fun with it. You have the mean little goblin poking at the hedgehog and getting his just desserts, while the other hedgehogs look
just right out of a cartoon.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some little part of me that's like, oh, I hope this isn't too silly. But then, so there's Vigilant Baloth, where this was a perfectly straightforward concept.
It cannot be more straightforward than this Baloth has vigilance.
Right. Yeah. So, it should look alert. But then the art came back and it's like, I'm really alert. Let's play fetch. So I love that one for its art.
Knight of the Tusk was
Knight
your
of the
third
Tusk,
one. Yes. We go over these things before the show.
I was trying to remember. Yeah, so this was another weirdo card where it's, a 3/7 human knight. It was important that it be a knight, design told me. So, okay, it's a knight riding an elephant, because that's cool, right?
Because why not?
It's just cool. And Knight of the Tusk
couldn't find a horse in the set? Were they all busy? Were they all busy doing other things?
It can't be a 3/7 riding on a horse. It needs to ride on something way bigger.
That's true.
So elephant just
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Yes.
So I mean that appeals to me at a lot of levels. It's kind of funny, but it's also I want to play a knight riding a horse.
Yeah.
In a D&D game, if not a Magic game. So.
All right. We've heard enough from James. James, you're great, but you're kind of done.
I talk a lot.
Yes, we invited Elena on the show for a reason, and the reason is she makes fantastic art, and it's cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to Diamond Mare. So what I've done is I've actually pulled the art descriptions that James wrote for these cards and that Elena had to work with. So let me read what the description is for Diamond Mare. So this is the actual text that's sent to Elena, and then she uses this to do a sketch, which then, what happens after that point?
You send in the sketch to see if it's a yes or a no, what needs to be fixed, and then if it's a yes or a yes with just some minor tweaks, then you move on to the final.
Okay. So the Diamond Mare setting, not setting specific.
The joy of the core set.
Yep. Colorless, it's a colorless artifact creature, which obviously ended up being. Location, on an open plain. There might be trees around, but they don't block the view of the sky. We don't see the sun. Action, show a beautiful living sculpture in the shape of a horse. I love that horse is capitalized here, just to make sure you don't miss it.
That's the thing that I do, is I put the keywords in the description in uppercase.
It is made from faceted crystal, like a cut diamond. Its shape should suggest the so-called most beautiful horse in the world. In the sky, it references a horse, but I'm not going to try to pronounce that. In the sky behind it is a rainbow going all the way across the sky. Rainbow in all caps. Parentheses, It could even be a double rainbow.
That is totally up to you. If he gives you the option of double rainbow,
Like, why are you not going to double rainbow?
There's my sense of humor. Just
It's not directly connected to the crystal horse, but the horse is framed by it. The idea is that the sunlight is coming from where the viewer is and shining through the horse to form the rainbow in the sky. The focus is on the horse. The mood is breathtakingly beautiful. So you sent us some sketches. So this is the before and after sketch. So tell us what you were working with here.
So this was a pretty intimidating art description because I've never, usually when you're doing a piece you want to like shoot reference and get an idea, but there aren't any real diamond horses in nature anywhere.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
hard to find.
Yeah.
we did send a picture of that most beautiful horse in the world, though.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's like, so it's a specific breed of horse that is also made of diamond. So I had to do a lot of research on what crystals look like, and when I do sketches, I really try to show exactly what I think they're looking for. So my sketches tend to be really developed. So, because I've had issues in the past where like, if I do a sketch and it gets approved, sometimes I just start going, and sometimes things aren't exactly the same as they were in the sketch, and then I have to go back and redo it anyways. So I've learned that for me, it's best to just really get a thorough idea with my sketch. So that's why when you see on these cards, they're kind of far along for a sketch, but I want to make sure that I'm really hitting the nail on the head of what they want, and that I can deliver on it. So,
what medium do you work in? Or mediums?
I use Photoshop.
Okay.
I use all Photoshop with the paintbrush tool. I used to have a scanner, and I would scan in sketches way back when, and then it broke, and I just never bought another one.
Okay.
So I just do, for now I'm starting all digital, but I've heard that it's better to go back to doing some traditional, and I'd like to do that.
Okay.
So.
And have you done traditional art for other games as well?
I haven't done, so when I went to art school, they basically made us all work traditional for the first 3 years, and then the last year I was really able to start learning how to do digital. And so I'm trained all traditionally, but when I graduated, I learned that pretty much the real world with deadlines and stuff, like, unless you were like amazing and you're already like established amazing, like Chris Ron or Steve Belladin, it's really hard to try to get into it doing traditional. Plus, like, digital just goes so much faster. So.
Well, now you mentioned getting into it. How, because you're relatively new to doing magic art, but you've been doing fantasy art for other games and other properties for a while. How did you get your foot in the door with magic for other aspiring artists out there who would like to be doing that? How did you do it? What was your path?
Okay, so like I said, I went to art school for 4 years, and my senior year, we had a guest illustrator teach. His name is John Matson, and he's done magic cards. And I was the only person in my class. My class of illustrators was only like 18 kids, but I was the only one who wanted to do fantasy art. So I was kind of on my own trying to figure out how do I do this? And then one day John Matson comes in, and I'm just like, what do I do? Like, tell me your secrets. Like, how did you get into Wizards? How did you, what did you do? And so that 4 years of college, I'm going to save you all a 4-year art degree if you want to get into doing this, is get your portfolio together and go to Gen Con or other gaming conventions or Comic-Con or IlluxCon and show your portfolio to as many art directors as possible. And I graduated in 2008, and I started hitting up Gen Con pretty much every year with just the hopes of possibly meeting a Wizards art director to get feedback, and then to bring back a new portfolio the year after. So I didn't start getting Wizards work until 2016. So it took a while, but it was, you bring your portfolio, you have them look through it, and they'll just give you very, honest feedback, and it's not personal, it's just, this is what you need to do to get to the level we need you at. And so every year it was like, here's a laundry list of all the things you need to fix. And the next year I'd come back with a new portfolio addressing the things that they had told me to, and the list just slowly got shorter. So yeah, finally in 2016 I started getting assignments from Wizards. And in the meantime, the benefit of going to Gen Con is there's a lot of other, companies there that will hire artists. I know they exist.
There are other companies. No, we understand. There are other companies there, yeah.
But that's a great way to kind of get started knowing how the process works, working with art directors, and starting to kind of build your portfolio while also making some money on the side. So.
When did you know you wanted, because you said when you were in art school you wanted to do fantasy art. When did you know that's what you wanted to do?
Well, I always knew I wanted to do art, and it really started when I was a kid, and I went to my local comic book store and I would buy X-Men cards because I was a big X-Men fan, and those were like these trading cards, and back in the mid-90s they were all like traditionally painted, and they were awesome. There was like one per every mutant, and it was random what you would get, and Julie Bell had done a bunch of them, and she was like my hero. And that's what started everything for me. Is like I would pull like a Storm card or Jean Grey, and just like, I want to do this. And I didn't find out about Magic until my first year of college, because I've always been a video game player. And I didn't have friends that were really into Magic until my first year of college, and then everything just kind of blew up. Because when I first opened that pack of Magic, I got started in the Odyssey block. So that dates me.
I started in Torment, so very
Nice.
in college. So,
I came back to the game in Judgment. So
Nice.
came back into you, but
I went away. I went away for a while.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a
Anyway,
long
I'm old. Go on,
me
Elena,
another.
the actual person we want to talk to.
But yeah, after my friend got me like my first cephalid blue-white like constructed deck, I was just like, where have these been all my life? This is what I want to do. So I was going to art school and I was like, do I want to do video games or comics? But I really like just sitting and drawing on one piece for a long time, and that's really what, you know, doing Magic cards is, because there's just so many branches of art right now. Obviously, like if you want to do a concept art that's moving really fast, that's like video games, but I just really like noodling and working for a long time. So Magic was like the perfect fit, and then I just have been playing it ever since.
Yeah. Now, do you think the fact that you play Magic has helped you illustrate Magic cards?
It makes me really excited every time something comes out. I think so. I mean, I had my first GP here in Seattle a couple months ago, and it's just so much fun to like nerd out and talk about, you know, all the things you can do with your cards. It's pretty unreal to be like, my first card was Supreme Will.
Yep.
You know, we don't have any say in what our cards do, obviously. It's just
Right.
whatever we're given, but it is awesome when it's a playable card.
Oh yeah, is that what you're always hoping for?
Oh my
You're
God,
just
yeah.
like, oh my god, I hope this is just a 4 of in every deck.
Yes. Yeah. And
Dragon Skull Summit's seeing a lot of play right now.
You don't actually see the rules text of the card initially either.
Nope.
That's-
Yeah, and you don't really know what it's gonna do unless I think it's very relevant. But yeah, it's pretty awesome when the card gets spoiled and you're just like, yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, I would guess that doing lands has like the highest rate of success.
I would imagine,
You know,
yeah.
It's like if the land description is like it is black but also red, and it's a land, it's like, oh, it's gonna be a dual land. It's gonna be great. I know it. I just know. Yeah.
And I think it helps being a Magic player to like be able to visualize that and
Right.
to really like you come into it and you know what does red mana mean? What does black mana mean? What does black red dual land mean? Ooh, it could be this card. You know?
Nice.
Well, let's look back at another one of your cards. You had 2 cards in M19. So the second one was Alpine Moon. And let me read the art description for that one. So this one actually was kind of fun. Right before the show, there was a thread. I forget if it was on Twitter or Reddit, but they were specifically talking about this card. We may have used it in an advertisement.
Is it about Emrakul?
Yes, it was
Oh,
in
man.
that thread, and it was just people going like, "Oh, but this art is great," and so that was fun to see. But let's talk about this one. So, Alpine Moon setting, non-setting specific. Welcome to a core set. Good job, James. It is a red spell. The location is above a forest at night. Action: show a bright full moon in caps in the sky above the forest, surrounded by a halo of light. Rainbow colors should be visible in this halo, so Elena got all the rainbow cards. It might be brighter at 2 points on opposite edges, like in the first reference. What was the reference that...
There's a picture of moondogs,
Okay.
but you can't say moondogs to an artist who might not speak English as their first language
Sure.
and expect them to know what that is.
Okay.
So.
Any part of the forest that would fall within the circle of the halo doesn't look like forest! Exclamation mark. Instead, we see distant mountains, perhaps cast in reddish light, to emphasize the link between mountains and red mana. The focus is on the moon and its halo. The mood is magic is washing over the land. The moon is full of mystery! exclamation mark. So let's take a look at what Elena did here. So Elena, walk us through your sketch and your final here.
So this is another one where I really developed the sketch, and this is also one where I also got carried away between. There is a picture in between this where I sent in the final and it had to be kicked back because I just got into drawing it so much. Where I had messed up was I had completed the circle and really excluded like the forest from the mountains. So I'd like carried that like halo all the way around, and they were like, no, why would you do that? That is not what you showed us. So I had to go back and fix it. But yeah, I don't know. I love painting landscapes, so whenever I get something like this, I just go nuts.
Yeah, because you do a lot of landscapes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which made you a good choice for. Look at that segue, everyone.
Expert.
Professional
expert
stuff
segue.
here. Elena also did the standard showdown lands, so we showed those off earlier, but we've got your sketches and the finals here. And again, that sketch looks a lot like that final.
I know.
Yeah, I feel like the one on the left you could have just sent in. So.
Oh, they had to noodle more on it.
Oh, you
Okay,
had to
so
noodle
what-
more. I know
what-
you love noodling. So.
Well, no, talk about what you did between the sketch and the final.
It's really just drilling in detail
Okay.
over and over again.
I know what the feedback you got was. Bring out the road more.
Yeah, that was so. So with this land set, you guys wanted a very like something to tie them all together separately, and I was like, oh, I want to make it a panorama, and you guys were like, no, that's cool. You can do that, but do something else too. Because I think, was it Mark Poole did like a shooting star lands, and those were super cool. So that was like his tying thing together. And so I was like, okay, well, how about I have a path that goes between all of them? And so if you look closely at each one of them, there is a path that kind of links together. Although on the island, it doesn't actually physically link because.
I see.
It links
And here's the
behind.
island,
Yeah, it might just be an actual peninsula. You don't
the
know.
clearly best one of the set because it is
No
an
bias.
island. No bias
No
at
bias
all.
Right.
It is actually both my favorite because it's an island and just because I think it's an amazing piece of art. But yeah, talk us through this one a little bit too, Elena.
It was really fun to draw. I don't know. I definitely wanted the island was actually the hardest to do in a panorama because like if you're looking at a plains, it's right in front of you. If you're looking at mountains, they're like right in front of you. An island, it has to be pretty far away. So if you actually like look at the whole panorama, like, and I've gotten like comments online like, yeah, obviously it doesn't fit quite as well because it is kind of zoomed out, but I really wanted to make it a very distinctive island because this was my first chance doing a basic land set, and being a Magic player, it's just really important to me to really make it iconic and make it, just really kind of punch you in the face with this is an island.
People have so many different choices, and people really care deeply about the basics.
Which land
which
they choose.
basics you play. So,
Yeah.
so making the sweetest, nicest looking one definitely makes a lot of sense. And even, when I do coverage at the PTs, like, we definitely sometimes point out when people like haven't spent that extra time to make sure all their lands look nice and matching. Because,
Really?
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Oh yeah, we'll start seeing these on GP coverage coming up. Let's look at the swamp.
Swamp was getting this art assignment was just, it was a dream come true. Like Cynthia was my art director, and she sent me this email, and she was like, "You don't have a ton of time. You have like 5 weeks to do it, but can you do it?" And like the answer to that, Cynthia, is it's never going to be no. It will always be yes.
Don't say that
Especially
too much. Like,
lands.
I have till Monday. Can you do it by Monday? It's like Friday.
Yes.
Yes, I can.
But so in between like getting the assignment, I was going to be going to Japan for a friend's wedding, and then I had like another like convention coming up, and I had already had like a couple other jobs from other game companies, but I was like, this will happen. I'm going to spend so much time on this.
I think I remember you working on these in Japan.
I did.
In that coffee shop. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I have to like this swamp. When we were in Japan, my good friend Rob lives there, and he my husband Matt and Rob love to hang out, and we usually go out every night and like just check stuff out in Japan, like go try food and stuff. But with this, at this exact swamp, I remember having to be like, you guys go ahead. I'm going to hang out at Rob's house and just draw.
Do this.
I'm gonna stream some
Yeah.
Netflix and Japan Netflix has different stuff, which is quite interesting. I'm gonna stream Netflix and work on this swamp. So now every time I look at it, I'm just like, I remember being in Japan and Osaka working on this. So that was a lot of fun to do, even with like a shorter deadline. You know, you got to make it work.
Yeah.
Does it evoke specific Netflix memories?
Yeah, yeah. It's one of my favorite, like, really guilty pleasure shows called iZombie, which is a terrible name, but oh my god.
Now, were you? What was the direction you were given for these? Because obviously, you know what the basic lands are. Was Cynthia just like do some sweet basic lands, or what was kind of the direction you were given?
Basically, like, do a set of basic lands, have them be cohesive in a way that you want, like the shooting star, the path, and make it you, and make it, you know, as cohesive and awesome as possible. So
Now, did you know that these were specifically standard showdown lands, or just lands?
I had no idea. I didn't know what they were for. I knew that they weren't going to be for like a specific set, because obviously it would have been a different, you know, storyline going on there. But yeah, I had no idea until like a couple months ago what.
Okay, so you didn't know you were following Rebecca Gway on these lands, and your eyes just got really close. So did you know when did you know that these were the lands that were following Rebecca's lands?
I think Matt, my husband, who's a wizard, he came home and told me one day, and I was just like, oh my god. Well, I hope I can.
Pressure.
Yeah, right.
Pressure,
Well, they were already done, so I was just like, well, that's good. I didn't know that a couple months ago, because that would have been even more scary.
And then we still have the sketches in the finals for the mountain. There it is.
Yep.
And then you got any stories on this one that involved Japan or anything else?
No, not this one.
Okay, and then forest.
The forest was interesting.
Wow, the tree disappeared.
It did. It turned into many more trees in the foreground. But this one I got feedback of, it looks too mountainy, having the oranges kind of in that background from the mountains. So I didn't keep the tree because of the panorama, because I didn't want it to have like a cut off tree, disembodied kind of branches. And if I scooted it over, it was just like, here is a picture of a tree.
And you can't see the forest for the tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks, James. Thanks for that, James.
So yeah, I just decided to kind of make it harder and cut the tree, but put like kind of a valley down into a whole bunch of Pacific Northwest looking trees. So
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the art from this set that you've done recently. I know you've got some stuff coming up again, so we'll definitely. Yes, I'm pretty excited about one in particular that we won't talk about, but we'll definitely have you back on the show to talk about some of that stuff. But in the meantime, we're going to spend the last 10-ish minutes with some Q&A. So if you have questions for either Elena or James, or any sort of general Magic questions that Paul or I might be able to answer, feel free to share them in chat. We've got someone watching, and I'll get them thrown up on my device, and we'll throw them out to our guests or ourselves. But we do have some questions that we already received from Twitter, so let's jump into these. James, you kind of touched on this earlier, but how early in the design process for M19 was the Chronicle of Bolas story finalized, and how did that impact the design from a flavor perspective?
The Chronicle of Bolas, being the fiction that is running on the Magic Story site right now, actually all happened after the set was done in design.
Okay.
Again, the card set itself involves these 5 pies, and so the direction that Nick Kelman, our narrative guy, whatever his title is, narrative designer, decided to go with the author was, let's do another pie.
A 6th pie, yeah.
A 6th pie. And he ended up working really closely with our team to get the details of that right.
So did he come to you with the idea of, let's do a Bolas origin story, or did you say, here's another pie that we could work in?
Pretty sure he came to us.
Okay. And then you guys kind of fleshed out the details and overarching story from there? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Next question comes from @JumpInTheWaters. This one's aimed at you, but you can answer this as well. All of the planes we visited recently, Zendikar through Dominaria, have been so unique stylistically. Which plane would you be the most eager to go back and work on again? And for Elena, you can talk about which one you'd love to do art for.
Which of my children do I love the most?
Yes.
You must choose and let the world know.
Yeah, all of them. I can't choose.
Like a
Okay. So I have the most personal investment in Ixalan because I
Okay.
was actually Cynthia again and I were the co-creative leads for that. But I have lots of ideas for stories and new stuff in almost every world we've been to recently.
Okay.
Innistrad, pretty excited about wherever we go with Innistrad next, whenever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Zendikar, kind of want to revive my D&D campaign in Zendikar.
It's James's motivation for creating and sculpting all these worlds just to make D&D campaigns for him.
So whenever you kind of finish leading a set or being part of a set, I'm assuming there's just a lot more on the table that you have kind of set up to go if we ever do return. Is there just like a lot of stuff kind of up in the air?
Yes.
Because you just can't flesh out the entire world in just
Right.
one set sometimes,
Right.
especially kind of moving forward.
I mean, a lot of world creation is almost like building a movie set.
Right.
Time allows us to only go so deep
Right.
behind the facade of what you're seeing on the cards, which necessarily leaves plenty of directions open. Working on the world guides has given me both a reason and a way to go deeper on some of these worlds, but
Okay.
yeah. How about you?
Yeah.
If we were to go back to somewhere, I'd really love to draw Zendikar.
Okay.
All those, especially the lands, just because it's so much fun to draw lands. But the landscapes and that would be wonderful.
Well, that actually kind of goes well. We got 2 questions for you from Twitch chat. So these are for Elena. One is, 3 questions from Twitch chat for Elena. Twitch chat. This is a record for Twitch chat questions on Weekly MTG for
Wow.
one person. All right. What's your tip for people wanting to tackle environmental art?
Do a lot of studies. Whenever I do a piece from the beginning, usually I go online and I just search and I find usually almost 100 different reference images. So like for that panorama, there's probably like 500 reference images that I got of just, tons of different types of trees, clouds, just everything. So don't hesitate to go and grab lots and lots of reference because you can't work out of your mind. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, maybe someday, once you're really well established and I want to draw this kind of cloud. But if you're just getting started, grab lots and lots of reference and just draw like crazy.
Okay.
And just if a great way to start is just to try to do like a sketch a day of like a very convincing field or a tree. Which sounds really boring, but it's actually super fun to do. So just keep going, keep running, keep drawing.
And you actually answered another one of the Twitch chat's questions. Do you use real life as inspiration or draw 100% from imagination or some sort of balance of the two?
It's totally a balance of the two, and we didn't bring this up earlier for the
Oh yeah, your crystal.
Yeah, so for the diamond mare, because there isn't a horse made out of diamonds in real life, I was like, how can
There should be.
I know, right?
Yeah.
How can I put these two things together convincingly and make it look cool? So I found these types of things that your grandma might have, or like my local pawn store had, which was perfect. I grabbed this guy and I set it out in front of my house. I probably looked like a very crazy person with my camera, and then it was a nice sunny day, and I just sat there, sat on the sidewalk, and just took lots and lots of reference pictures. That way you can see, probably can see on the camera, but the way light goes through it, it actually creates a shadow and a highlight at the same time.
Okay.
So be creative with your reference and kind of make a hybrid, because a lot of times stuff in Magic doesn't exist in real life.
Right.
So sometimes you have to be creative and try to kind of piece things together to make it work.
Okay.
In case you can't see that, it's a little crystal pig.
Oh yes,
That
It
is
is.
a
It's adorable.
Yeah.
That's for M20, the diamond.
Yes,
Diamond
diamond
Spoilers!
cage.
All right, another question for Elena. What's the type of creature you would like to paint the most? Cephalids, merfolk, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'd really like to go outside of my comfort zone and do like a basilisk or something. Something that's just, because normally if I draw a creature, it's going to be like cute and fluffy, because I don't do a lot of creatures. So doing something like that, or even maybe a dragon, would be a nice, fun, hard challenge.
Okay. All right, we have another question from Twitter, and this one I think is mostly aimed at James. Is entirely aimed at James. You don't know the future yet. With the Johnny and Teferi joining the Gatewatch in recent sets, are we headed towards a cycle of allied colored oath cards, or is it just random coincidence that these two characters fit in that scheme? And that was from at Pluke1016.
Well, Pluke 1016. This is a case where actually the story has been driving those cards entirely.
Okay.
We know what world we're going to. We come up with thoughts about what planeswalkers should be involved in those stories, and some of them should be taking the oath and joining the Gatewatch. It is purely coincidence that we've had two allied colored planeswalkers.
Okay.
Looking at the future, that cycle is not going to continue.
Okay. You heard it here first.
I'm like trying to think, and I was like, oh, you're okay.
Okay. Final question. It's actually many questions. Many questions. So we've gotten some questions about the Silver Showcase, mostly on Twitter. So for those who don't know, this is a exhibition event that's taking place at Pro Tour 25th anniversary at the beginning of August. We announced it this morning. The article announcing it is on dailymtg.com if you want to go check it out. But we've gotten a bunch of questions, and we were all at an offsite this morning, all hands meeting, and so we're still digesting a lot of that feedback, so please be patient with us on that front, but I can answer a couple questions that we've gotten. First question is, why these players? So we kind of just announced all 8 players today. The answer is that we're testing some things out. We're trying out this pro-am structure that we thought might be an interesting experiment. And we're also working to include audiences outside of Magic. So we do, especially at the Pro Tour, we do a really good job of talking to Magic players and people who love Magic and people who know Magic. But we also want to grow, and we want to show off how awesome our game is to other people. So that's why now I hesitate to call any of these guys amateurs, because they are definitely not. But the pro-am setup is kind of in that vein and looking to tap into other audiences. The other question we're getting is why this format? It's a super weird format. Again, if you haven't checked out the article, it is a Rochester draft featuring 3 packs of beta, a pack of Antiquities, and Arabian Nights together, because those only came as packs of 8 before, and then a pack of Legends. All Rochester drafted between these 8 people. It's very weird, but we did this thing called the beta draft at GP Vegas, which was super exciting. And we couldn't just do a beta draft again. This is the culmination of our 25th anniversary celebration.
I was actually going to wonder, it's like, how do you one-up the beta draft?
How do you one-up the beta draft?
Was insane.
You do a beta draft plus. Beta draft plus. So it's weird, it's a bit esoteric, but it's also big. We know there was a lot of excitement around the beta draft, and so we wanted to go one bigger. And so that's how we landed on this after much discussion and debate. The final, actually it wasn't a final question, but I do want to say that we are still taking in all of this feedback and listening to all of it. And as part of that, so again, I said this was an experiment, we're finalizing a lot of our plans for the Pro Tour in 2019. And it's going to look a little bit different, and in a lot of good ways. And we are going to announce a lot of those changes in August, so look for that in August. We'll have more details then. But until then, that is what I have. Elena, if anyone wants to see your art or anything like that, where do they go?
My website is alayna.net, which is ALAYNA.net. I registered back in high school.
That
so
is,
how did you get
that is amazing, yes. Next week we are off due to the holiday. It is. I hope everyone has a happy July 4th if you're in the United States. I hope you have a happy July 4th if you're anywhere. There will probably just be fewer fireworks. And then, even though our show would take place on July 5th, no one's in the office. It's a holiday weekend essentially at that point. The week after that, we have a great show. That is July 12th. So we're going to be talking M19 draft. We're going to have some early Commander 2018 previews. Did you have any pieces in that? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Okay.
Nothing new.
Nothing new. Okay. So we'll talk about what the 4 decks are, what the colors are, what the themes are, and we'll show off a bunch of art from C18. And then we're also going to talk more with Trick Jarrett about our Twitch channel. So we're doing a bunch of exciting stuff with our Twitch channel, more than just this show. So tune in for that on July 12th, and we will see you then. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you.